I dialed a random number, but someone answered. At first, I thought it was just a mistake. But the voice on the other end, it knew my name. And then, the real horror began. Fearful face. What would you do if a stranger called you from inside your own house? Stay till the end to find out what happened. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new terrifying story. Now let's begin. I've always loved nature. The forest near my town was my go-to place whenever I needed to clear my head. It wasn't particularly large or dense, just a quiet, peaceful place where I could walk, breathe fresh air, and escape the noise of everyday life. That day was no different. I grabbed my backpack, put on my headphones, and headed toward the familiar trail. The weather was perfect, just the right amount of sunshine filtering through the trees, a light breeze rustling the leaves. Birds were singing, and everything felt calm. As I walked, I followed the same path I had taken dozens of times before. The trees stood tall on both sides, their branches swaying gently. The ground was soft from recent rain, but the trail remained clear. Everything seemed completely normal. But then something changed. It was subtle at first. The sound of birds faded. The rustling leaves went still. It wasn't just quiet, it was silent. Not the kind of peaceful silence you'd enjoy, but an eerie, unnatural absence of sound. Like the whole forest was holding its breath. I took out my headphones. Nothing. Not even the distant hum of insects. Just silence. A chill ran down my spine. Maybe it was my imagination. Maybe I had simply tuned out the noises with my music. I shook it off and kept walking. After a few more minutes, I decided to head back. But as I turned around, I hesitated. The path, it didn't look the same. I had been here many times before, yet something fell off. The trees seemed taller, their branches twisting in ways I didn't remember. The path itself felt narrower. I ignored the uneasy feeling and walked back the way I came. But after a few minutes, I stopped. My stomach dropped. I was right back where I had started. The same fallen tree. The same oddly shaped rock. The same spot I had just walked past. I turned around again, quickening my pace. Maybe I took a wrong turn. Maybe I just needed to pay closer attention. But after 5 more minutes of walking, I was back again. Panic started creeping in. What was happening? I wasn't lost. I was following a straight path. There was no way I should have ended up in the same place twice. I took out my phone. No signal. The battery, which had been nearly full when I left home, was now inexplicably at 10%. I swallowed hard, trying to push down the growing fear in my chest. Something was wrong with this forest, and somehow it didn't want me to leave. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself. There had to be a logical explanation for this. Maybe I had just gotten turned around, distracted by my own thoughts. Maybe I was overreacting. I picked a landmark, a large, moss-covered tree with a deep split down its trunk, and decided to walk in a straight line from there. No turning, no second-guessing. If I walked straight long enough, I had to reach the edge of the forest. But after what felt like 15 minutes, I was back at the same moss-covered tree. My heart started pounding. That wasn't possible. I spun around, looking at the path behind me. The trees stood tall and still, their branches tangled like outstretched fingers. I had been walking straight, I was sure of it, but it was like the forest had shifted behind me, folding itself in a way that brought me right back to where I started. I took out my phone again. 8%. I opened my map app, hoping GPS would show me my location. The blue dot appeared, flickering slightly. Then it jumped across the screen, bouncing from one random point to another, before freezing in place. No roads, no trails. Just blank space. I tried calling someone. Anyone. But there was no dial tone. Just silence. My breathing quickened. I was trapped. I shook my head. No. That's ridiculous. This was just a forest. Trees, dirt, air. Nothing more. I needed to mark my path. I bent down and grabbed a small rock, then dragged it across the bark of the moss-covered tree, leaving a deep scratch. That way, if I ended up back here, I would know for sure. Then I walked. Faster this time. Straight. I moved past the trees, stepping over roots, ignoring the way the silence pressed in on me. 10 minutes. 15. My leg started to burn. And then I saw it. The tree. The same moss-covered tree, with my scratch in its bark. I froze. My hands trembled. A cold sweat broke out on my skin. This isn't real. This isn't real. I had just walked in a straight line for at least a mile. There was no way I should have ended up back here. A cold breeze whispered through the trees, rustling the leaves for the first time since the silence had swallowed the forest. And then I heard it. A faint sound. A whisper? A breath? No. Footsteps. Somewhere behind me, something was moving. Not an animal. Not the wind. Something else. I turned slowly, my stomach twisting into knots. The forest stretched out before me, shadowed and endless. But between the trees, just at the edge of my vision, I thought I saw a figure, standing still, watching me. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, and it was gone. I wasn't alone. And whatever was out there, it didn't want me to leave. I stood frozen, my body refusing to move as my mind screamed at me to run. The figure, if it had even been real, was gone. But the feeling it left behind wasn't. The air felt heavier, thicker. The trees pressed in closer, their twisted branches reaching toward me like skeletal hands. Something was different now. I swallowed hard and took a slow step back. The leaves above rustled softly, too softly, like they were whispering. I turned, trying to locate the source of a sound, but the forest was still. Too still. No birds. No insects. Just the sound of leaves shifting, even though there was no wind. Then I heard it. A voice. A low whisper, threading through the air like a breath against my ear. Turn back. I spun around, heart pounding. Nothing. But my instinct screamed at me. I wasn't alone. I took a step forward, but the whisper came again. Don't go deeper. It was coming from the trees. I wanted to believe it was the wind playing tricks on me, but deep down, I knew better. Something was speaking. Something was warning me. And yet, somewhere ahead, barely visible through the gaps in the trees, I saw a light. A dim, flickering glow, like a lantern swaying in the darkness. Hope surged in my chest. A cabin? A campsite? A way out? I started walking toward it, ignoring the whispers, ignoring the unease crawling up my spine. Then snap. A branch broke behind me. I spun around so fast I nearly lost my balance. Something moved between the trees. Not a shadow. Not an illusion. I saw it this time. A figure. Tall. Unmoving. Hidden just beyond the edge of my vision. Watching. The breath hitched in my throat. And then, it took a step forward. I ran. Not toward the light. Not toward safety. I just ran. Branches tore at my arms. Roots threatened to trip me. But I didn't stop. The forest blurred around me, the whispering leaves turning into a deafening roar. And then, I broke through. One moment, I was surrounded by trees. The next, I was standing in a clearing. And in the center of it, there was a house. Old. Abandoned. Its wooden walls barely standing, its windows black and empty. But the light? The flickering glow I had seen? It was coming from inside. Somewhere deep within the house. Someone was waiting. I stood at the edge of the clearing, staring at the house. It shouldn't be here. Everything about it felt wrong, like it had been waiting for someone to find it. Waiting for me. The flickering light inside pulsed softly, casting shifting shadows against the cracked windows. Behind me, the trees whispered, "Go back." But ahead of me, past the broken porch, something was calling me forward. I took a step. The boards beneath my feet groaned as I climbed the porch stairs. The air was thick with the scent of damp, wood, and something else, something metallic. I reached the door. It was slightly open. I didn't want to touch it, but I did. As soon as my fingers brushed the wood, the door swung open on its own. A rush of stale air spilled out, curling around me like invisible fingers. The inside was worse than I imagined. The walls were covered in scratches. Long, deep marks like something had been trying to get out. A single wooden chair sat in the middle of the room. And on it, an old rotary phone. I stared at it, my breath shallow. The light I had seen was coming from an oil lamp on a shelf, but it barely reached the corners of the room. I took a slow step forward. The house creaked. And then, the phone rang. The sharp, mechanical ring shattered the silence. I nearly jumped out of my skin. I had no reason to answer it. No reason at all. But my hand moved on its own. I picked up the receiver. For a second, there was nothing but static. Then, breathing. Shallow, ragged, like someone struggling to draw air. I gripped the phone tighter. "Hello," I whispered. Silence. And then, a voice. Not a whisper this time. A broken, desperate voice. "You shouldn't be here." A chill shot down my spine. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely steady. No answer. But I could still hear the breathing. Faster now. Closer. And then, the phone slammed down on its own. The lights flickered. The shadows in the corners moved. I wasn't alone. I turned to run, but the door slammed shut. And from the darkness of the house, something started to move. The house was silent. Too silent. I pressed my back against the door, heart hammering in my chest. My breath came in short, panic bursts. Somewhere inside the room, something was moving. Slow. Deliberate. I forced myself to turn my head. The shadows near the far wall shifted. No, they thickened. The darkness took shape, stretching upward, forming something tall. Too tall. And then, a second ring. The phone. I didn't want to answer it. But the moment I looked away, the ringing stopped. And the breathing returned. Right behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing there. Just the empty room. Just the chair. Just the phone. The silence pressed in. Then, a whisper. Right next to my ear. "You called me." I stumbled back, slamming into the wall. My pulse roared in my ears. The phone rang again. Ring. 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 I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the receiver and pressed it to my ear. "What do you want?" I shouted. For a moment, there was only static. Then the voice returned. "You let me in." Every hair on my body stood on end. Something moved in the darkness, right in front of me. The lamp flickered violently. The walls groaned. The scratches, they were getting deeper. No new ones were appearing. I had to get out. I turned, reaching for the door, but the wood was ice cold under my fingers. It wouldn't budge. The phone line crackled. Then I heard it. A second voice. Fainter. Weaker. "Run." The moment I heard it, the lights went out completely. The darkness swallowed me. And then, hands. Cold, unseen hands grabbed my arms. I screamed and pulled away, slamming into the door with all my strength. It burst open. I didn't think. I just ran. Through the porch. Down the steps. Into the trees. I didn't stop until I saw the glow of the road ahead. I turned once, just once. The house. It was gone. Like it had never been there. The only proof that it ever existed? The phone. Still clutched in my shaking hand. The dial tone hummed softly in my ear. And then, before I could move, a single, final whisper. "See you soon." What do you think really happened? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you never miss a story. There are many more terrifying mysteries waiting on my channel. Are you brave enough to watch them all?